This is day 29 of the 30-Day Solo Podcast Challenge. I'm David Hooper from BigPodcast.com, and my job is to help you grow a big audience for your message. We're going to spread it. Whatever it is that you've got, I'm going to help you get it out there, and we're going to do that via podcasting. This series of episodes will help you clarify your message, which is the number one thing you can do to attract and build a great audience. You're going to improve your delivery, make more money, have more flexibility with your podcast. And you're also going to build skills that will translate elsewhere. Your public speaking, your private speaking, just one-on-one speaking. Your message is going to become so much clearer. People are going to understand you better. You're going to add personality to it so people will feel that they know you better. As I mentioned, what we're working on here helps you to clarify your message, but also you're bringing in personality. So it's going to help you stand out from the crowd. All the books, blogs, podcasts, competition that you've got to work with in business or in your personal life, that's gone because you're bringing something new, unique, and interesting to the table. And you've got this baseline foundation that is something great to build upon. If you have not done this already, listen to the intro episode first. That explains everything, the what and the why of what is happening here. That's at bigpodcast.com/subscribe. You get the intro, all 30 days of the Solo Podcast Challenge, and also a conclusion that wraps everything up in a nice little bow. bigpodcast.com/subscribe for that. Previously, on the last two episodes, we talked about what you want people to know about you, but also what you hope that they don't find out about you, secrets. And what happens when you let those secrets out? Sometimes something really great happens. So if you haven't listened to those last couple of episodes, do it. And where do you find them? That same place where you subscribe to this podcast, bigpodcast.com/subscribe. Today, the focus is ideas. If you're going to do a solo podcast, you need something to talk about. That's one of the big reasons that I hear that keeps people from doing solo podcasts. People say, I don't know what I talk about. After you listen to this episode, work through this exercise, that is not going to be a problem. Here's your question. Where are you getting ideas related to the topic that you podcast about? Where do you come up with stuff? You may not have as much content as you want, as many ideas as you want right now, but you're doing something right because we've been at this for 28 days so far. We're on day 29. Maybe it's me giving you the ideas. That's a valid answer, but hopefully you're branching outside of this. Where are you getting those ideas? What are the conversations that you're having with people? What are the books that you're reading? What is the stuff that you consume? I have a belief that input equals output. The more you consume, the more your output's going to be. Here's why this is important. Because as people are listening to your podcast, we've set you up to be an expert. And we talked about how they wonder about what it is that you do, how you do it. And this is one of the things that they wonder about. Where does he come up with all this stuff? I'll give you a personal story. I had a guy ask me this very question at a live event I was doing. I was speaking about podcasting, and he asked me, where do you get your episode ideas? My answer was this: I pay attention. I'm aware of what is going on around me. And I'm going to get into a specific technique that you can use to do the same thing. First, let me give you his response. He said, so you're present. As it turned out, this was a guy who was working as a mindfulness coach. And he was right. That's what being present is. Paying attention. Here's your action step. This is something that's going to help you pay attention. It's going to make you aware of what's going on around you. And when things are going on around you, it's going to have you look at those things and think to yourself, could I make this an episode? What about this as a lesson? What about this would the people who listen to me be interested in hearing about? You could do this on an online document system, something like Google Docs. Maybe you want to do it on a spreadsheet, your word processor. You could, if you want to be old school, use that trusty pen and paper that you've been working on to get you through this process, the 30-Day Solo Podcast Challenge. And I want you to write something down that happened to you today. It can be short. Here's something I recently experienced. These are the bullet points to give you an example. Walking dog. Cars parked on both sides of street. See a guy down the street walking two dogs. Decide to cross street. Step into road. Hear a car coming. That's the setup. I've got a few more bullet points from my notes, but rather than give you the entire list here, I'm going to show you how I would turn that into a story. I'm going to do it on the fly. I'm going to add a little bit of flair. And this is what you can do with your podcast to have this unlimited content that you're looking for, what you're going to need to do a successful solo podcast. Before I get into that, though, let me finish up the action step. Do this daily. Write stuff down. And as I mentioned, it can be an online document, Google Docs, Google Sheets, something on your word processor, pen and paper. It doesn't matter how you do it, but do it daily. And what's going to happen is you're going to start looking for things. You're going to go out with the intention that you will later write something down. And you will go throughout your day starting to see the potential in the things that you experience. I'm going to go back to these bullet points and I'm going to draw this thing out into a story. I've got a dog. His name is Parker. He is half German Shepherd, half Lab. I take him out 4 times a day. I got Parker when he was about 18 months old. He wasn't housebroken, or maybe he was. I wasn't going to take the chance. So I started taking him out. I enjoy getting out in my neighborhood. I was starting to meet people, starting to see a little bit more of the neighborhood. So I kept it up. And even today, it's been a couple of years since I've had him, I still get out about 4 times a day. I live in an urban neighborhood. The houses are close together. There are cars parked on both sides of the road. So I'm walking Parker down one of the streets in the neighborhood, and I see a guy probably about a block away. He looks to be about my age. He's walking 2 dogs. And I was thinking to myself, how does that guy manage that? The dogs are sniffing stuff. One of them's hiking his leg on something. And I've got my dog, and he's got his. We're headed toward each other. And I think, it's probably better because he's got 2 dogs. I don't want to get 3 dogs all tangled up. I don't know if his dogs are friendly. I'm just going to cross the street and not deal with this. So that's what I did, or at least that's what I started to do. I stepped into the road, and I hear this. I figure it's a delivery truck. We got delivery trucks all over the place. People love Amazon. People love deliveries. I don't know what people are getting delivered, but there are a ton of them. I can't see around the cars that are parked on my side of the street. And the truck is coming one way. A car is going the other way. Everything is so narrow that only one person can pass at a time. I step back. I don't want to get myself involved in this, especially with the dog. The car drives by. The truck, he comes out, and he starts moving closer. And again, I can't see this truck. I look down. The guy with the dogs is getting closer to me. I turn around, and it's a monster truck. This thing is huge. I'm 6'3", and I would have had to step up to it with a little bit of a ladder. And I turn around. The guy with the 2 dogs, he's just a few feet away from me at this point. And he looks at me, and I look at him, and we both bust out laughing. And he says, "Yeah, I was thinking the same thing you were." And we had this instant rapport. I didn't know this guy. He had dogs, and I had my dog there, so we had that in common. We're in the same neighborhood, so we've got geography in common. But at that point, we're experiencing the very same thing together. There was instant chemistry. And my thought process went from, hey, I don't want to get my dogs tangled up with his dogs. I really don't want to see this guy because I kind of want to be alone right now. I want to get to the other side of the street. To having this laugh with the guy, I'm thinking, hey man, we should hang out. It was instant rapport. And I think there are a few lessons there. One, having shared experiences, and also having a wait and see attitude when it comes to meeting new people. Maybe the guy's the coolest guy in the world. Maybe he was a jerk. I don't know. I was trying to avoid it 1 minute. Then we have this shared experience. I'm wanting to hang out with the guy. All right, so I'm going to end the story right there. I could go on and on. The point is this. There's an intro, there's the meat, and there's sort of an exit outro for me, sort of where I wrap the thing up in a nice bow. That's what you've been doing throughout this session. You're leading people into a story, you're giving them the meat, and then hopefully there's a lesson, there's a call to action, there's something where the person listens to you, feels that he's had a complete experience. So when you're thinking about the things that you write down today, those bullet points, I want you to think about the intro, the meat. In this case, that was the 2 cars passing each other. I found out one of them isn't a delivery van after all. And then I've got this shared experience with the guy. And then wrapping it up. What is the lesson? What is the thing that's going to give your listener that complete experience? We're getting ready to wrap up this 30 days. I've said it a lot, but it's worth saying again. Stories are important. Facts tell. Stories sell. Stories are what gets people connected to us. Stories are what differentiates us from every other podcaster out there. If we were just to tell facts, just be an information podcast, that makes us a commodity. But when you start bringing personality and stories and yourself into your podcast, That brings something to the table that people can connect to, they want to listen to again, they want to tell their friends about, they want to do your marketing for you. Keep that outline short and tight. You saw how I went through those bullet points, that entire story, about 7 bullet points. Walking dog, cars parked on both sides of the road. See a guy down the street walking 2 dogs, decide to cross the street. Step into a road, hear a car coming. Just bullet points, you don't need to script the whole thing out. Hit record, go for it, upload it. If you want to send it to me, you can do that via bigpodcast.com. I would love to hear what you're doing with this. I would love to hear your stories. I've gotten several over the 30-day solo podcast challenge, and I'm loving them. I'm sharing them with the newsletter, sharing them with other people. So if you want me to share yours as well, reach out to me. Let's have that conversation. I want to know what you're doing with this. Bigpodcast.com is the way to do that. And final thought on this, make this a daily habit. Start looking for opportunities of things that you can talk about. This is the perfect type of thing that you can add to an existing podcast. You can tell a personal story at the front end of your podcast. There's that beginning, middle, and an end. It's super quick. It gets people engaged in the podcast. Then you move into an interview. Then you move into a panel discussion. Then you move into the meat of your podcast. This linear concept that I'm talking about, it works for specific stories. It works for your overall podcast. So you can put one of these complete stories, the beginning, middle, and an end, in the very beginning of your podcast. So that complete story is the on-ramp to your podcast. Then the meat of the podcast, that panel discussion, that interview, that's got its own beginning, middle, and an end. You wrap that up. Then you wrap the entire episode up in a nice bow so people feel like they've got that complete package. Do it daily. You will be amazed at the ideas that you come up with. And send me those stories via Big Podcast. That is it for today. Right now, before you start outlining everything, hitting record, and making that episode, I want you to do a couple things. 1, go to bigpodcast.com/subscribe. Subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss the entire series. We're almost done. And I want you to complete it with me. Because speaking of wrapping up everything in a nice bow, that's what's getting ready to happen in just a couple of days. Bigpodcast.com/subscribe will make sure it happens for you. I've got 3 buttons, one for Android, one for iPhone, one for an RSS feed. It's super easy to subscribe. So go ahead and do it right now at bigpodcast.com/subscribe. While you are there, I've got a free podcast toolkit for you. 25 episode templates. This makes your podcast creation so easy. I've got social media templates to make connecting with people easier. I've got a guest process that will make connecting, getting good interviews, and your entire guest interviewing experience so much easier. The whole thing is designed to streamline your podcast creation, editing, and promotion process. So get it. It's free. bigpodcast.com/subscribe. Thanks for sticking it out with me on the 29th day of the 30-day solo podcast challenge. We are almost there. One more day, and then a nice conclusion to wrap everything up in a nice bow. bigpodcast.com/subscribe. Make sure you get everything, and I will see you tomorrow on the next episode of the 30-day solo podcast challenge.